It all started like a bad sitcom pilot. Except the laugh track was just my own nervous chuckle, echoing through the empty house. The alarm blares at 5:30, a sound straight from the depths of hell, dragging me out of a dream where I actually had weekends off. I'd roll out of bed already dreading the day's disasters, open houses, frantic phone calls, and the ever-present threat of spilled coffee on my only clean shirt. Coffee was my only salvation, burnt, sludgy, and barely drinkable, but it was the fuel that kept my eyelids open and my sarcasm sharp. I'd chug it while scrolling through emails, clients demanding, lenders nagging, raccoons squatting in attics. Each message more urgent than the last, each quick question a potential hour lost. My car was a mobile office of despair, littered with expired listings, half-eaten protein bars, and enough empty coffee cups to build a small fort. My power suit was a bargain blazer that screamed substitute teacher, paired with shoes that had seen more open houses than I could count. I'd drive around unlocking doors for people who'd complain about bathroom tiles, bad vibes, or the way the sunlight hit the living room at 2:17 p.m. on a Tuesday. Clients expected mansions on a shoestring budget, convinced that HGTV miracles could happen for the price of a studio apartment. They poked load-bearing walls like they were fruit at the grocery store, as if a gentle squeeze would reveal the home's secrets. And critiqued houses as if they were on TV, rating kitchens and closets with the seriousness of Olympic judges. Showings were a circus, rotisserie chickens as centerpieces, ferrets in sweaters, and endless awkwardness. I never knew if I was hosting an open house or auditioning for a reality show. Every day was a parade of the bizarre, navigated with a forced smile and the hope of a commission that might never come. I became an expert at nodding, smiling, and pretending I hadn't just lost another deal to a cousin's friend's neighbor. It was less a career, more a never-ending episode of What Now? Each day a new plot twist, each client a new character in my ongoing sitcom. And I was the over-caffeinated, underpaid star, holding the keys to chaos and hoping the next door I opened led somewhere better. People think real estate is glamorous. TV agents in heels, luxury cars, big deals. Reality, it's a low-budget horror movie. The pressure is relentless. You're a therapist, financial advisor, and cat herder, all for a commission that's never guaranteed. You work for months and clients can vanish overnight. Poof, there goes your paycheck. The clock is your enemy. Everything is urgent and your phone is a digital leash. Miss a call, lose a deal. Miss a deal, miss your mortgage. The anxiety is constant, a low hum you can't escape. The market flips on a dime. One day you're juggling offers, the next you're begging for showings. You're expected to know everything. Interest rates, zoning, school districts, taco spots. It's a non-stop performance and the curtain never falls. You sell the dream, but live the nightmare of uncertainty. Behind every open house smile is a bundle of nerves, held together by caffeine and hope. It's a high-wire act with no safety net, and the fall is always looming. There wasn't one moment that made me quit, no single dramatic event that pushed me over the edge. It was just 1,000 tiny cuts, each one barely noticeable on its own, but together, they wore me down. I remember losing a deal with a sweet couple after a health scare, watching their hope fade as I delivered the news. I sat in my car and cried, not for the money, but for the emotional toll, the feeling that I'd let someone down. Then came the great staging disaster, a day that felt like a comedy of errors except no one was laughing. Toddlers running wild, a dog with a taste for chaos, and a house destroyed by spaghetti sauce and canine decorating. It was a mess that felt impossible to clean up, both literally and emotionally. I spent my weekends cleaning, staging, and canceling showings for chaos I couldn't control, always chasing a sense of order that never lasted. Despite being surrounded by people, clients, colleagues, families, I was always alone. Driving from house to house buried in paperwork, the stress was my only constant companion. 14-hour days ended with cereal for dinner and canceled plans with friends. My social life shrank to the size of my inbox. The job isolated me, building a wall between me and the world brick by brick until I barely recognized my own life. Over time I became cynical, impatient, glued to my phone, always waiting for the next crisis or complaint. I started to see homes as products, clients as paychecks, and every conversation as a transaction. The joy of helping people faded, replaced by weary obligation, and a sense that I was just going through the motions. For sale signs became warnings, not opportunities, symbols of stress rather than hope. My passion was gone, replaced by exhaustion and a sense of loss that settled deep in my bones. The job didn't just drain my energy, it drained my soul, leaving me hollow and tired in ways I never expected. I realized I didn't like who I was becoming. The mirror showed someone I barely recognized, someone worn down by disappointment. The signs weren't just for houses, they were tombstones for my peace of mind, silent markers of dreams deferred and sanity lost. That's when I knew something had to change. I couldn't keep sacrificing my well-being for a job that no longer brought me joy. I was done selling dreams while living a nightmare. It was time to reclaim my life, to find meaning beyond the next commission. It was time to walk away, to choose myself over the endless grind, and finally let go. Real estate is a front row seat to the weirdest show on earth. I had a client who brought his parrot, Captain Squawk, to every showing. The bird critiqued kitchens louder than any buyer. Hoarders? I've seen houses packed with newspapers from the 70s. Selling them was an archaeological dig. Then there were buyers obsessed with doorknobs, rejecting homes over brushed nickel hardware. Sellers lied about everything: water stains, mold, haunted basements, polka-loving neighbors. Every deal was a detective story, piecing together truth from a web of half-truths. You smile, nod, and try to keep your sanity as the parade marches on. The job wasn't just about houses, it was about surviving the cast of characters. Each showing was a new episode of what could possibly go wrong? And the answer was always, plenty. In real estate, you don't just sell homes, you survive them. And sometimes, that's the real victory. The job didn't stay at the office, it invaded every part of my life. Friendships faded, I was the king of rain checks and last-minute cancellations. My health tanked, tension, headaches, junk food, and sleepless nights became routine. I was always tired, running on caffeine and anxiety. My empathy became a liability. I absorbed every client's stress. Emotional roller coasters left me moody and irritable with loved ones. I became jaded, seeing every interaction as a transaction. Trust eroded after too many lies about perfectly fine roofs. Optimism was replaced by weary pragmatism. I wasn't helping people find homes. I was just closing painful transactions. The job hollowed me out, leaving a shell of who I used to be. The burden was heavy and it grew every day. Something had to give. My breaking point? A showing that felt like the season finale of my personal sitcom from hell. The house was a bank-owned disaster, holes in the roof, stained carpets, and a kitchen that smelled like defeat. My clients, first-time buyers, saw potential. I saw a money pit. I tried to warn them, but they insisted on exploring every inch, including the horror movie basement. I led the way, only to fall through a rotted stair, my leg wedged in splintered wood. There I was, trapped, humiliated, and literally stuck in a dark place. My clients helped me out, still hopeful. I had nothing left to give. I told them to run from the house, and realized I needed to run from the job. That was my grand finale. Limping away, bruised in body and spirit. The house wasn't the only thing falling apart. I was too. That's when I knew it was over. Time to reclaim my life. Quitting was terrifying, like jumping off a cliff without knowing what's below. Real estate was my identity, my income, my everything. But I was burned out, and leaving felt like failure. I agonized for weeks, then finally walked into my broker's office and said, "I'm done." He just nodded. He'd seen it before. Relief washed over me. The weight was gone. The first days of freedom were strange, waking up early, expecting chaos, but finding silence. My phone was no longer a source of dread. I rediscovered simple joys: grocery shopping on a Tuesday, reading in the afternoon, reconnecting with friends. I threw out my blazers, deleted the MLS app, and started living again. Quitting wasn't failure, it was self-preservation. I chose sanity over sales, health over hustle. It was the best decision I ever made, and for the first time in years, I could finally breathe. Life after real estate was a blank canvas, and I was finally holding the brush. I took time to decompress, travel, and rediscover myself. The skills I'd gained, negotiation, crisis management, talking to anyone, weren't wasted. I wanted to use them for something I loved, not just for someone else's mortgage. I returned to an old passion: claymation. Making little stop-motion videos, I turned my real estate nightmares into comedy. The parrot, the doorknob lady, the basement, all became claymation stories. It was therapy, creativity, and joy rolled into one. Leaving real estate didn't close a door, it opened 100 new ones. I was finally building a life on my own terms. Today, I'm a recovering real estate agent with a desk full of clay, a mind buzzing with ideas, and hands that are always a little bit stained with color. My days used to be filled with contracts and negotiations, but now, they're about sculpting tiny worlds and bringing them to life, one frame at a time. And honestly, my biggest stress these days is getting the lighting just right for a shot, or making sure a tiny clay eyebrow is perfectly arched. My heart is full of stories I can't wait to tell, and every day feels like a new creative challenge. I've traded my blazer for a hoodie, and my stiff shoes for cozy socks. The only meetings I have now are with my imagination, and the only deadlines are the ones I set for myself. My lockbox is gone, replaced by a camera that captures every quirky moment. I don't regret my past. It gave me resilience, wild stories, and a sense of humor about life's curveballs. Now every disaster is just more material for my art. I've learned to turn chaos into creativity, and my claymation channel has found an audience that laughs and learns with me. Turns out everyone has a real estate horror story, and sharing them has helped me connect with people in a way that feels genuine, honest, and even healing. These connections aren't transactional, they're real, built on laughter and shared experience, not just business cards and handshakes. Quitting was the best sale I ever made, and it's the only deal I've never second-guessed. I sold my stress and bought back my life. The claymation version of my world is brighter, funnier, and a place where I get to decide the ending. Here. Everything is fully under my control. If a character gets too annoying or a scene goes off the rails, I just squish them back into a ball of clay and start again. It's a freedom I never had before. And it's taught me that the most valuable property you can own is a life you love living in. And that's a closing worth celebrating. Here's to new beginnings, one frame at a time, and to building a life that's truly your own.